Hi, everyone. I thought today that I would read to you from a book by one of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver. It's a collection of her essays. She actually wrote 33 collections of poetry and 4 books of nonfiction, including some books of essays, of which this is one of them. So I'm reading what I'm going to read. It's an essay here called Swoon about her relationship to a spider. And I'm reading it in particular because I recently shared on social media an experience I've been having with a spider. And a number of folks mentioned this essay, which I love. And some folks had said they'd never heard of Mary Oliver and hadn't read this essay. So I thought I would read it for those who would love to hear a little bit of Mary Oliver, or if you haven't heard from her, to get a little taste of Mary Oliver and to ideally inspire you to read more. She's really marvelous. Okay, here goes. This essay is called Swoon. And get comfortable because it's let's see. Not big pages, but it's like 9 pages. All right, so here we go. Swoon. In a corner of the stairwell of this rented house, a most astonishing adventure is going on. It is only the household of a common spider. And she has a little asterisk at the bottom that says probably Parasteatoda tepidariorum, the species of the spider. A small, rather chaotic web, half in shadow. Yet it burgeons with the ambition of a throne. She, for it is a female that is always in sight, has produced 6 egg sacs, and from 3 of them so far, an unaccountable number of progeny have spilled. Spilled is precisely the word, for the size and the motions of these newborns are so meager that they appear at first utterly lifeless, as though the hour of beginning had come and would not be deferred, and thrust them out, with or without their will, to cling in a dark skein in the tangled threads. I am less precise about the timing of these events than I would like. While I was quick to notice the spider and her web, I was slow to write down the happenings as they occurred, a concordance I now wish I had. It was so casual at first. I was sure that something, probably a careless motion on my part, would demolish or tear the web and remove the spider from sight. But it did not happen. Now keep in mind, Mary Oliver, she's known for writing nature poems. One of her favorite things to do in her life was to take walks alone in nature, and that's where almost all of her poetry and observations emerge from, is her relationship with nature, and nature, what she learns from nature, and how she incorporates how she lives her life. So when she's saying she wished she had written it down, it's because I would guess she's so used to walking in the woods, which she always did with a notebook and pen in hand or in pocket, that she, and with the intention of noticing that's what she's used to. She's used to writing things down immediately as they happen. But this happened in a house she was staying in, and so she wasn't necessarily expecting this encounter with nature. So that's part of why she's wishing she had written it down in real time. Okay. I began to watch her in October, and it's fair to say that being a poor sleeper, especially when away from home, I have watched her quite as much during the night as during the day. I always learned something new about Mary. Like, I didn't know she was a light sleeper that had sleeping issues. Now we do. That when she's away from home, she's a poor sleeper, which I think is very sweet and endearing to think about such an esteemed, incredible author and writer, and to just take into account her humanity, to know that about her. It's a very intimate detail. Perhaps when I pass by, she senses my heft and shadow, but she floats on her strings and does not move, nor, I think, would she flee easily from any intrusion. Her egg sacs, all of them, are hanging near her, and in an archipelago, the oldest at the top and the newest at the bottom. And without question, she is attached to them in some bond of cherishing. Often she lies with her face against the most recently constructed, touching it with her foremost set of limbs. And why would she not be fond of it? She made it from the materials of her own body. Deft and plump, she circled and circled what was originally a small package and caused it to grow larger as the thread flowed from her body. She wrapped and wrapped until, now, the sack sways with the others in the threads of the web. Oh, that's her poetic voice, the threads of the web. Not round exactly, but like a Lilliputian gas balloon pulled slightly along the vertical. And still she fusses, pats it, and circles it, as though coming to a judgment, then pats some more, or dozes, still touching it. Finally, she withdraws her sets of legs, curls them, almost as if in a swoon or a death, and hangs motionless for a full half day. She seems to sleep. The male spider comes and goes. Every third or fourth day I catch sight of him lurking at the edge of the web. What he eats I cannot guess, for the treasures of the web, which do not come, sometimes for many days, are to all evidence for the female only. Whether she refuses to offer him a place at her table, or whether he has no need of it, I do not know. He is a dapper spider, being male and no spinner. He lacks the necessity of the pouch-like body in which to store the materials from which comes the bold and seemingly endless thread. He is therefore free to be of another nature altogether, small and shy and quick. I find her commentary fascinating. Twice while I have been watching, when the egg sacs have been in the unseeable process of pouring the tiny billeted spiders forth, he has been in the web. Perhaps like some male cats and other mammals also, he will take this arrival with ill humor and feast on a few of his own progeny. She's deep. I do not know. Whenever I see him poised there and lean closer to him, he steps briskly backward, is instantly enfolded into darkness, and gone from sight. It is 5 a.m. Good fortune has struck the web like an avalanche. A cricket, not the black, flat-bodied northern sort I am used to. I didn't even know there were different sorts of crickets. But a paler variety with a humped, shrimp-like body and whip-like antennae and jumper's legs has become enmeshed in the web. This spider is not an orb weaver, which is the kind of spider that has shacked up in my window. That is, she does not build a net silken and organized and centered along a few strong cables. No, her web is a poor thing. It is flung forth ungloriously, only a few inches above the cellar floor. What is visible is in a wild disorder. Nevertheless, it functions. It holds. Now, the 6 egg cases and the cricket, which struggles in a sort of sling of webbing. Which struggles in a sort of sling of webbing. The spider now is never still. She descends to the cricket again and again, then hastens away and hangs a short distance above. Though it is almost impossible to see, a fine line follows her, jetting from her spinneret as she moves. She is wrapping the cricket. Soon the threads thicken. The cricket is bound with visible threads at the ankles, so gruesome, which keep it from tearing loose with the strength of the huge back legs. How does the spider know what it knows? This is Mary Oliver's incredible genius, is to look in these moments and to be so present as to ask these questions, which are about the cricket and also about so much more. How does the spider know what it knows? Little by little, the cricket's long front limbs with their serrated edges, flung in an outward gesture from its body, are also being wrapped. Soon the cricket's efforts to free itself are only occasional, a few yawings toward push or pull. Then it is motionless. Poor cricket. All this has taken an hour. There has been nothing consumable in the web for more than a week, during which time the spider has made her 6th egg case, and presumably before that carried through some motions of romance with her consort, and produced the actual eggs. Her body, so that's why the male spiders hanging around. They occasionally consort, not just once, which is also wonderful about her writing, because you start to learn like facts about nature and about spiders are different things. So I didn't know that I guess I thought that it was sort of spiders were like a one and done thing, and then but now, like, apparently there's some kind of spider where the male spider hangs out by the web and swings by to create more progeny that it might later eat. Okay, sorry to get off track. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, I think her body during this week, that dust-colored sofa button bulbous part of her body, so visible to our eyes, has shrunk to half its previous size. Then, as I continued to watch, the spider began a curious and coordinated effort. She dropped to the cricket, and with her foremost limbs, which are her longest, she touched its body. The response was an immediate lurching of cricket, also spider and web. Wow, so the cricket is still alive when it's wrapped up in her web. Swiftly she turned. She was in fret, beginning the motions of turning, even as she reached forward. And then, even before the cricket reacted, I remember this part, and it's so gruesome. Well, at least I think it's gruesome. With her hindmost pair of limbs, she kicked it. She did this over and over, descending, touching, and turning, kicking. Each of her kicks targeting the cricket's stretched out back limbs. She did this perhaps 20 times. So think about that. Mary is like counting each kick while this is happening to know that it was 20. Mary, by the way, was a Virgo. Her birthday is September 10th, so the fact that she would count the number of kicks is sort of in alignment with her astrological placement. With every blow, the cricket swung, then rocked back to motionless, the only signs of life, a small, continual motion of the jointed mouth, and a faint bubbling therefrom. By the way, this is obviously, I don't know if Mary attributed her her own qualities or was into astrology at all. So obviously this is through just my own perception. It may or may not mean anything. Okay. As I watched, the spider wrapped its thread again around the cricket's ankles. Then, with terrible and exact precision, she moved toward an indentation of flesh, just at the elbow joint of the cricket's left front limb. Oh, and to this soft place she dipped her mouth. But yet again, at this touch, the cricket lurched. She's basically narrating the cricket being eaten alive, but it is great writing. So she retreated and waited, and then again, with an undivertible aim, descended to that elbow where, finally, with no reaction from the cricket, she was able for perhaps 3 minutes to place her small face. The cricket is donezo. There, as I imagine it, she began to infuse her flesh-dissolving venom into the channels of the cricket's body. Intermittently, oh no! Intermittently, the cricket still moved. So this procedure even yet required some stopping and restarting, but it was clearly an unretractable operation. At length, in 20 minutes perhaps, the cricket lay utterly quiescent, and then the spider moved with the most gentle and certain of motions to the cricket's head. Its bronze visor-like face, and there, again surely, and with no hesitation, the spider positioned her body. Mama's gotta eat. Her mouth once more at some chosen juncture near the throat, the spinal cord, the brain. Oh man, I forgot how gruesome this was. Now she might have been asleep as she lay, lover-like, along the cricket's body. Later, hours later, she moved down along its bronze chest and there fed again. Slowly her shrunken body grew larger, then very large, and then it was night. Early in the morning, the cricket was gone. As I learned from later examples, when the quiescent cricket was no more than a shell, she had cut it loose. It had dropped to the cellar floor, where any number of living crickets occasionally went leaping by. By any one of them, it had been dragged away. Now, wait, but does that mean by any one of them it had been dragged away? Does that mean that... I wonder if she's alluding to some fact about crickets that, like, living crickets will collect their dead. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Now the spider, engorged, was motionless. She slept with her limbs enfolded slightly, the same half-clench of limbs one sees in the bodies of dead spiders. Yeah, when spiders die, they basically undergo like rigor mortis, just like you hear about with humans, and that's why they shrivel up. They just... But this was the twilight rest, not the final one. This was the restoration, the interval, the sleep of the exhausted and the triumphant, at least from the spider's vantage point. I have not yet described the mystery and enterprise for which she lives, the egg sacs and the young spiders. They emerge from their... That's right, she's doing all of this for the babies. They emerge from their felt balloon and hang on threads near it. A fling, a nebula. Only by putting one's face very close and waiting and not breathing can one actually see that the crowd is moving. I love the idea of thinking of Mary Oliver, like getting her face as close to little spider eggs and spider hatchlings as possible. Like, she really got in there. It is motion not at all concerted or even definite, but it is motion, and that, compared with no movement at all, is of course everything. Also think about this. She's describing periods of time that are 20 minutes, an hour, and then days on end. Like, it's incredible the devotion, that the time that she took. such humility, really, to devote such a good amount of time to just observe the world of this spider. This is what I really love about her, that she does this, she made a whole life out of this, she made whole works of art out of this, out of making observing the natural world a worthy endeavor. It's just, I don't know, it's amazing to me. But okay. And it grows. Perhaps the spiders feel upon the tender hairs of their bodies the cool, damp cellar air, and it is a lure. They want more. They want to find out things. The tiny limbs stretch and shuffle. So now she's contemplating the consciousness of a teeny tiny baby spider that's barely moving in its little spider sack. Little by little, one or two, then a dozen, begin to drift into a wider constellation, toward the floor or the stair wall, spreading outward even as the universe is said to be spreading toward the next adventure and the next endlessly. I have a question mark on my page in that because I'm not sure I still even understand what Mary's saying there when she says that little by little, one or two, then a dozen, begin to drift into a wider constellation toward the floor of the stair wall. And this is the part that I'm not sure what she means. Spreading outward, this part, even as the universe is said to be spreading toward the next adventure and the next endlessly. I wonder what she means. If anyone has any ideas, feel free to let me know. In 6 or 7 days after their birth, the little spiders are gone, and my attention passes from that opened and shrunken pod to the next below it, which is still secretly ripening, in which the many minuscule bodies are still packed tightly together like a single thing. How do they get out of the egg sac? I love that she intersperses questions throughout this, for herself, for all of us. That she asks questions, that she's curious. This is so exciting and kind of instructive. How do they get out of the egg sac? Do they tear it with their fragile limbs? Do they chew it with their unimaginably tiny mouths? I wonder how a teeny tiny baby spider's mouth is. I do not know. Nor do I know where they all go, though I can imagine the dispersal of thousands into the jaws of the pale, leaping crickets. Aha, the cycle of life. So they were literally grown from the body of a cricket, where they very well may become food inside of the mouth of other crickets. Certainly only a few of them survive, or we would be awash upon their rippling exertions. Wow, what a great way to say that. Rippling exertions. Only once in this space of time, after the bursting of 3 of the 6 pods, did I see what was clearly a young spider, many times its original birth size, and still no larger than a pencil's point. It was crawling steadily away through a last hem of the mother's web. So sometimes when I read her, there are phrases that pop out that, whether they're in context or I sort of conjure how they might be a context in other realms, I just love some of her phrases. So thinking about the last hem of a mother's web, whether a spider mother or a human mother, but just what might that mean to be crawling away from the last hem of the mother's web, you know? The idea of when we leave for kindergarten, or when we move out of our homes, or I'm sure there are many other ways to interpret it, but I do love thinking of it that way. Those moments of separation from the last hem of the mother's web, and what that's like for the spider and for the mother, the baby spider and for the mother spider. Anyway, This is the moment, and by the way, I encourage all of you to get this book and to read this essay without me interrupting, if you'd like the pure experience of just Mary's words. This is the moment in an essay when the news culminates and subtly or bluntly the moral appears. I love this. She's doing like what's called, I think it's called breaking the fourth wall, in theater, when an actor speaks directly to you. She's speaking directly, that this is an essay she's writing and she's now in the middle of it. And this is a certain moment in the essay. This is the moment in an essay when the news culminates and subtly or bluntly the moral appears. It is a music to be played with the lightest fingers. I love her. She clearly is not a big fan of formulaic essays where some kind of blunt moral is professed. And so when she says it is a music to be played with the lightest fingers, morality, that's sort of, I love her style, it's such a wonderful way to say that. It's such also a great description of her writing, that she plays with the lightest fingers as she writes, leaving so much, like she's so artful about her own temperament and her, how her way of being comes through the work. Light, certainly, though also lightly, though on any matters of morality, just that she's not about that. All the questions that the spider's curious life made me ask, I know I can find answered in some book of knowledge, of which there are many. But the palace of knowledge is different from the palace of discovery, in which I am truly a Copernicus. The world is not what I thought, but different and more. I have seen it with my own eyes. But a spider, even that. I think this, while this is the place in the essay where she sort of says, some kind of blunt moral appears, that doesn't happen, but I do believe it is like the heart of this essay, this part where she says, which I just think is one of the most, these are among the most beautiful sentences I've ever felt, read, encountered. But the palace of knowledge is different from the palace of discovery, in which I am truly a Copernicus. The world is not what I thought, but different and more. I have seen it with my own eyes. But a spider, even that. I love that she calls knowledge and discovery palaces, and that they're different palaces. The palace of knowledge is the palace of knowing. The palace of discovery is the palace of learning, exploring, adventuring, not knowing. It's so exciting. I love it. I love both palaces, but I think I especially love the palace of discovery, even more so. Okay, our time in this rented. What do you think of all of this? Are you moved by that? I would love to know. I'd love to know what you're moved by. Our time in this rented house was coming to an end. I love that this was just a rented house. She's just renting a house, maybe for vacation. Maybe she said it, or to work, or to write. I believe she's with her lifelong partner. I think she's rented this lifelong house with her, this house with her lifelong partner, Molly Malone Cook, who was a photographer. They were together for more than 40 years. But here they are in this rented house, and here she's discovered this world that has led to this extraordinary essay. So, look at that, creating such an event out of a spider she's sharing a rental house with. All right. Our time in this rented house was coming to an end. For days I considered what to do with the heroine of this story and her enterprise, or if I should do anything at all. The owners of the house were to return soon, no reason to think they would not immediately sweep her away. And in fact, we had ordered a house cleaning directly following her departure. I'm here with my dog Wanda, who's licking himself, so I don't know if you can hear the licking, but should I attempt to move her, therefore, and if so, to what place? To the dropping temperatures of the yard, where surely she could not last out the coming winter? To another basement corner? But would the crickets be there? Would the shy male spider find her? Could I move the egg sacs without harming them, and the web intact to hold them? I love that she thought about all of this. And essentially what she's thought about is there any way to do anything good for these creatures in a way that wouldn't actually disturb them, that wouldn't disturb the sort of little ecosystem, the natural ecosystem of them, and how perfect the arrangement is. So we're at the end, the last paragraph of the essay, which of course begins with, finally, I did nothing. I simply was not able to risk wrecking her world, and I could see no possible way I could move the whole kingdom. So I left her with the only thing I could, the certainty of a little more time. For our explicit and stern instructions to the cleaners were to scrub the house, but to stay out of this stairwell altogether. Swoon. An essay in Upstream, a collection by Mary Oliver. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I clearly do. Thanks for listening.